I'm Kevin with GunSkins. Today I'm going to be walking you through our scope skin install. First thing we want to do is we want to get it cleaned up. We're going to use our frog lube solvent. Just kind of soak down the whole scope, scrub it up, make sure we're ready for a clean install. Frog lube solvent, we're just going to go ahead and lay it on nice and even, top and the bottom. We're just going to take our brush, scrub it. Focus on the edges up along the scope mounts and all these little contours on the elevation and windage adjustments. We just want to make sure we get any dirt or oil, even stuff from the factory. We want to make sure we get that off there so we can get the skin to stick clean and grab all those contours. Once we get that scrubbed up, grab a lint-free cloth, just dry it off, wipe it down, and then we'll let it dry and we'll get on with the install. Okay, so I have my scope skin all temped up here. What we're going to do is we're going to start with the top of this bell and then work our way down towards the scope mount. And what I want to do is cut a piece that's going to seam right at this this edge here. Just kind of gauge it. I'm going to take that piece, start it centered on the bottom. All right, so we work the material back around to the bottom. You can go ahead and you can either cut it along the pattern, you can meander it, or you can just go with a straight line. I mean, it's underneath the scope, you're never really going to see that. And we peel away that excess. And same thing along here, we're just going to take the knife and angle it away from the scope, trim off any excess there. And then we'll move on to the piece for that bell. So this next piece, we're going to take it all the way down to this scope mount. We're going to cut it just a little bit oversized, right in here. We're going to start this piece centered on the top. Work it down towards the mount. Hit it with heat. If you get a wrinkle or anything, you can just pick it back up, pull it out. So you can see I'm having to pull it a little bit more on this top edge of the bell because it's so much wider than the base. These shorter scopes have actually a more aggressive angle there, so that's why you have to kind of take it in two pieces and then pull on that top edge to keep it contouring around. Just use the heat to keep the material pliable. Just use your fingers to press out any creases or seams. just past the center. Turn off. And we'll do the same thing, working around the other side. All right, so I've worked the material back around the other side, underneath where we're going to seam it. It's the same thing. I'll just make a cut through here, right about the midpoint, underneath the scope where it'll be hidden, and then peel away the extra material. I'm going to trim along the scope mount as well. Hit that with some heat. Tidy up those edges. Perfect. We're going to move on to this centerpiece here. Same thing, we're going to cut a piece about the same width. Get that off. Start it centered up on the bottom. Work it around to the other side. Trim off the extra. So I'm not gonna worry about trimming off these pieces here, because as I bring in these middle pieces around the turrets, it's gonna cover that stuff. So we'll move on to this next cut piece here, and I think I can use my leftovers. Trim a little bit off of it. The same thing, we're going to start centered on the bottom. Underneath, trim off the extra. So for this next piece, we're going to do it all in one. I'll just cut it big enough to cover that whole section, maybe a little bit extra. You can trim it off the end there pretty easily. And we're going to start centered on top again. And up underneath, just past halfway, is what we're shooting for. Work out these little creases. Peel off the excess, and we'll work around the other side doing the same thing. So, brought both pieces together. I'm going to go ahead and trim off this excess here, just about in the middle. And I'll trim off this extra back here. I'll just use my heat to detail it out. Take my knife. Trim that piece loose so that adjustment works. And we're good to go on to the next piece. All right, so tuck it up in, underneath on the bottom. Hit it with some heat. Trim it off on the underside, center it up. Okay. All right. So for our next piece, I'm going to trim a little over the width to cover around this adjustment knob. We're going to make it a little bit extra long. Come across there. Now I'm going to remove the cap. I'm going to place it on there, about centered up. I'm going to trace around it. Take that piece, I'll set it centered up on there, like that. All right, so when you're coming back together, you might end up with a little crease here. So you just take your knife, relieve that tension, kind of pull up on the material, actually kind of work it in a little tighter, and then overlap it where you come together. To finish it off. Okay, so we're gonna do the same thing. For the elevation adjustment. Kind of center it up. Right there at the end. Okay. To help blend these out, I'm going to want to trim along the pattern to end it instead of just a straight line or even just meandering it, trying to be specific with where you're trimming it so it looks like the pattern ends there since it's overlapping another piece. All right, so we're going to take our cutout pieces, lay them on top of our caps here, press it into place. On to the next one, same thing, center it up, get it in place. Okay. Now we're going to cut a piece slightly wider than these are tall. Peel it up. Stick it to where it's overlapping on the top and the bottom just a little bit. Hit it with heat. And stretch it around. Try and trim along the pattern where they overlap. Try to not bury the blade into your thumb. Trim off any excess that overlapped on the bottom. Just angle the blade away from the cap there. Run it along the edge. Then we'll go ahead and repeat the same process with the other cap. Alright, so we're going to move on to the scope mounts. So I'm just going to take a piece slightly wider than they are. Trim it off there. So I'm going to start it centered on the top, set the material, and work towards either side. All right, so same thing. Place the material centered up. Stretch it around. And then we'll trim off the excess. All right, so we have all our parts and pieces installed. I'm gonna move on to post-heat. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use my heat gun and just run over the whole scope, heating it up really well and pressing it in with this, this foam here. What this does is it just helps set the material. It's also gonna help bring out all the details. Just kind of clean up the whole look. Anywhere you've been trimming and there's any sort of imperfect edge or fray, it's gonna help pull that back in and clean it up. So here's our completed scope skin. Obviously, as you saw with the kit, it's something that you could use to pretty much wrap out any accessory, binoculars, anything you want to protect and camouflage. Thanks for watching.
Wrap up your guns and gear, camouflage it all out. GunSkins is here, flat rate, shipping that's right. $5, fully loaded, guaranteed to make you holler. If you ain't happy, get your money back. AR-15 skin, it's where it's at. Mag Reps pistol skin, give me 2 or 3 of that. Install it yourself, it's so easy, yeah. Get yourself a gun skin, have fun with it. Get yourself a gun skin. Have fun with it, made in the USA. Waterproof, matte finish, 5-year warranty. They done did it, GunSkins.